What if I promised you that it's possible to get through a divorce or child custody dispute and not only keep your sanity, but also have your peace? Welcome to the Stephanie Young Law Podcast, hosted by me, Stephanie Young. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the who and the why behind the Stephanie Young Law Podcast. I'm a family law litigation attorney with my office located in Covington, Georgia. I have a passion for being my client's biggest legal ally. So let's talk about that, the why. Why did I start this podcast? My purpose behind the podcast is because I want to empower people. I want to connect with individuals that are going through a huge life change that is family law related, or who knows someone that is. In today's world, with the divorce rates how they are, we all are aware of that. It's very, very likely that you know somebody, if it's not yourself, that is going to interact with and experience a family law related issue in the legal system. I want you to know that when you come to meet with me, I realize that you're probably facing one of the toughest times in your adult life. You're probably stressed, emotionally drained. There's a lot of uncertainty going on in your life. I'm sure of that. And then you're going to come to me when you walk in my door as a family law attorney, and I'm a stranger to you. And I'm going to sit there and I'm expecting you to get really personal with me and answer questions like, when was the last time you had sex? Or how much credit card debt do you have? And with that, I understand that you're really having to connect with me to be able to feel like you're comfortable to open up. Now, my initial goals are related to your emotions. They're not to do with money. I know, I'm an attorney, right? And I'm a business owner, but I honestly mean that. My initial goals upon meeting you have everything to do with emotions. I want to make you feel heard. Sometimes that means validating your feelings or your actions. My goal is to lift weight off of your shoulders and unpack them onto mine. Now, remember, I said initial, not my only goals. I have this joke that I use that I'm not a car salesman, right? So that means that when you come and meet with me, I'm not going to end up calling you a few days later while you're in the carpool pickup line with your kids and say, hey, you ready to pull that trigger and pay me to get that divorce on the way? What's funny about that, though, is one time I really did have a car salesman that I did a consultation with, and I knew he was a car salesman because he had put that, on the intake notes. And of course, we talk about employment and what you do for a living and how much money you make. The awkward person that I am, of course, I still used the joke. Of course I did. I tried to gauge it, but I gauged wrong, right? He really didn't think it was so funny. But in all seriousness, my goals really are about empowering you. I want to bring you peace and reassurance, albeit not false hope, that everything really is going to be all right with the right advocate on your side. Now, I started today's episode making you a promise, right? And hopefully you didn't follow what my usual advice is, which is to run from any attorney that guarantees you anything. But honestly, I promised you that it's possible to get through a divorce or a child custody dispute and not only keep your sanity, but also have peace. Because after all, peace is priceless. Now, I don't help my clients accomplish this by telling them what they want to hear. My clients do not pay me to do that, unfortunately. They pay me to tell them what my thoughts are. And sometimes the universe lines up, and what the client wants to hear and what my legal advice is correspond. Now, it's important that you know that my thoughts are not the same as your neighbor who got divorced in Alabama in 2010. Mine are backed by almost a decade of litigating in the same courtroom that your case will be or has already been filed. And the reason that that's important is because you need to question your sources in today's world. What do I mean by that? Thinking about technology and thinking about how much we have access to things, right? We are just have information at our fingertips. But then that information can sometimes, and a lot of the times, contradict. So what do? We need to look at not only the what and the why, but the who. Where are we getting that information? You can Google my resume. You can Google anyone's resume. You can see what school I went to, what law school I went to, what internships I've had. And you can do that for any attorney. But what you're not going to be able to Google is someone's life experiences. What makes them, what's their soul like? What makes them who they are? So I wanted to use that opportunity in this podcast today. I remember I told you that we were going to talk about the who. That's me. And I wanted to tell you just a little bit about my background. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated from Great Britain, from England, proudly. We came here when I was a child, and I was raised by a single mom. So in a single parent household. I was a child of divorce. So I've got that perspective. But what really, I think that has really made me the person that I am today, and the attorney and the advocate that I am today, was the idea that I had an advocate role much, much earlier than I even knew what advocate meant, that big word. I didn't know what that meant, but I realize now in retrospect that I look back, I was an advocate. So my mom, she was a single mom, and of course, we came from England, so hopefully most viewers know this, that in England you speak English. So of course we knew English. We didn't have what a lot of immigrants deal with, which is that language barrier. So we were very blessed for that. But it doesn't mean that the cultural barrier wasn't there. And it also doesn't mean that sometimes in the rural South that people really did still have that language barrier. My mom had a very thick, still does, have very thick British accent. And because of that, it meant that, we would go places, drive-through. We couldn't go to the drive-through. My mom, I would be in the backseat. My mom would try to order something like, Mom, I want a high C to go with my kids' meal. We would pull around, and what do you know? We got an iced tea. You do not give a British woman an iced tea. And of course, I was in the back like, Mom, I wanted fruit punch. And so what that looks like is just a little snippet of the reality is that my mom tried, right? But her confidence would go down, and she just did not have that ability to do everything that she wanted to do in terms of she didn't have the confidence. And I saw that. And I really quickly picked up on that as a child. I saw that she didn't have that confidence and there was a gap that needed to be filled. And so I picked it up. And it wasn't slack. I really felt like was my role, and I loved it. I thrived on it, and it gave me purpose. There was no point in which I looked back and thought, oh man, I have to help order the food and call up and order our Chinese. And that's just a snippet of it. For example, with the bank, we used to write checks back then when I was a kid. And, and I would help my mom, okay, let's write down what the bills are. Because, that's also another aspect that my mom didn't pay the bills when she was married to my dad. That was something that he did. He took care of that. And so I helped her kind of break it down because we didn't have any family here. Keep in mind, we're immigrants. My family lives in England. And I was talking about 8 years old that I was doing that and looking and saying, okay, let's look up how do I write a check? And I taught myself that. How do I call the power company and get something? I would pretend to be my mom on the phone. And it worked. And I loved it. And I looked back now and I realized that I was an advocate before I knew what that word and that role actually meant. We didn't have any lawyers in my family. So, and that's great. I went to law school, and I tell this story to anyone that's kind of looking into law school and maybe, with fear, or they don't have that family support in terms of with the family background of having lawyers. And I just want everybody to know in terms of that's in that situation and feel empowered in the sense of you don't have to. Be a trailblazer, right? Make that road. And what that looked like for me is, my family doesn't go to college. Never. So we went to college, and then I went to college and was one of the first ones in my family to do that. And never mind law school, right? You're going for a doctorate degree, which is what you get at the end of law school. It's a Juris Doctor. The first day, I realized very, very quickly, not only is that gender difference still there, it's better, still there. I went to Georgia State Law, a little shout out there. And we had a great diversity in our class of age, culture, race, religion, gender. But it was still, what was still predominant was the fact that people were coming from households in which their grandparents, their dad, their mom, their uncle, somebody in their lineage there was an attorney, which was fantastic. I mean, that's great. They had that, not only the support, but also a little bit of that intel of, hey, if I have a question, if we are tasked with, let's go home and today we've got to draft a complaint for a divorce, a complaint for a dog biting case, and I could take the notes from class, but then it was just me and my computer, and the internet wasn't quite as vast as it is today, and have to figure that project out. And then I realized that I was getting compared to kids that were going home to their attorney family member that was like, oh yeah, look, here's a go by, and plugging in everything. And I really could have let that turn me away, because I was like, I'm never going to be able to compete with that, ever. I didn't have those resources. But you know what I did have? I had other people in my corner, in my court, telling me how proud they were, and just my head should have been so big, right? And it still is, because I've got so many wonderful people and mentors that are telling me, you can figure it out, you can do it. And so that's what kept me going. And then also this background idea that this is what I want to do this for. If I was going to do it for myself in terms of get through law school and the bar exam, I wouldn't have done it. I can almost guarantee that I wouldn't have been able to do it. It wasn't for that. It was for a bigger purpose. And now I get to reap the benefits of what that purpose is, which is the clients that come to me every day. The clients now that I get to be their advocate in situations in which they might have a voice in, but they don't feel like they can use it, or B, they don't know where to start. Now, my background, I think that matters, because my clients have problems to solve. Don't we all? I mean, we all have problems to solve, but I know that if my clients, they've got big problems to solve. They're going through a life change that is significant. All of them, every single one of them. Now, and I think it's important for me to have the background that I have, because I'm not telling my clients advice without sympathy, without some personal understanding of what they're going through. And I don't mean, oh, I had a divorce, so I get it. Because everyone's divorce is different. It's that background of, I know that you're going through an extremely hard time, and you're going to have to come up with a lot of solutions to problems you didn't want and problems you never thought you were going to have. But I saw that in my single mom when I was 8 years old. And I saw her take something that, you could have looked and you could have become a victim. She very well could have been. And she ran with it. Now, albeit not without support, but that's what I'm here for you. Here to be that support and telling you, not falsely, no false hope. You're not going to get that from me. But a reality to empower you and say, you can do this. I know you can. That I want to empower others just like others have empowered me. Now, I'm not telling you what you want to hear, and that can quite literally save your life. And it most definitely will save your sanity and your money. So I've basically built my career in sharing realities that don't really hit as hard, because I have helped equip you with the resources to handle those issues. Now, coming up on the podcast next week, I really want to kind of put this plug in and let you know what's coming up. Next week, we're going to talk about child support. And let me tell you this, you're probably paying too much child support. And that's coming from a family law litigation attorney. So hopefully that has some weight to it. We're going to dive into the 2026 legislation changes that are absolutely promise that it is affecting your child support numbers and where they should be. The next episode after that, the following week, we're going to talk about, well, you've been served divorce papers. Now what? I can't tell you how many times, that's something that clients come into my office for a consultation. I sit down with them. Here's these papers. Oh my goodness. What is this? I don't even know what this means. What are they saying? And we can break that down. And there's a lot of steps that go into that not only actual litigation steps that you should take, and that's what I'm here to give you advice on, but also emotionally. what things that, I can kind of tell you, and we'll break it down in that episode, what emotionally, you're looking at moving forward. The following week after that, I'm going to talk about I would say besides divorce, one of the biggest topics and the biggest family law types of cases that I take, which is, but I'm on the birth certificate. Gosh, if I had a dollar for every single time I heard that, I'm on the birth certificate. So what do you mean I don't have rights? I probably would have a lot more money, right? But in all honesty, that's very relevant in times where, people are getting wary of getting married. I understand that. The divorce rate's high. So what does that mean? It means that people are having children out of wedlock. And that's okay until it's not, right? Until that relationship dissipates and you think your name's on the birth certificate. And what does that mean? I'm going to break that down in that episode. If you're currently going through a divorce or a custody dispute, or you're about to, or maybe you know someone that is, let's protect your peace. Set up a paid consultation with me, Stephanie Young Law. Peace is priceless and attainable. We've got this. It would really mean a lot to me, my family, my kids, if you would like, subscribe, and share with your friends, family members, coworkers, anyone that you think that this content could be relevant.